You ever thought about the difference between having a network and networking? I think networking, we all hear about. We hear about events, trade shows, conferences. Everybody kind of hands out their business card, presses the palms, and then you leave and you go home and you have a bunch of business cards or registrations, and everybody kind of forgets which one were you? Oh yeah, did we talk about something? And we call that networking. Now, does it really do anything? Probably not. Maybe if you had dinner with them or you sat down and had a coffee, got to know them a little bit better, that would be networking. How about your network? Now, our network, we don't really invest in. We look at it too transactionally. And this is not unnatural. It's actually very natural. It's probably the default. We have deals to close, and we do what is necessary to close them, and then we move on to the next deal. But then when the pipeline dries up and the leads aren't that good, which they don't seem to be nowadays because, people don't need to convert anymore. They can get all the information without giving the email address. And if they do give the email address, they give a private one that's kind of hard to decipher who this is, what territory it is. And they probably just wanted the free thing anyway. They didn't want to learn about your product. They want the free thing, the ebook, whatever. So where does that leave us? That leaves us in this precarious situation where we have to build our network over time without just the transaction in mind. Of course, we want to sell. Of course, we want to build relationships. Of course, we want to dominate our territory. But if we look too short-term at it, where does it leave us? It leaves us only with the things that would probably happen with a lesser salesperson. What we want is the bigger deals, the more reliable deals, the repeat deals, the deals that grow, the deals that make the next deal easier, this compounding effect, the snowball effect that will make our lives better because it becomes more predictable, it becomes more tangible, less about them thinking of us as a commodity, which drives us down to who you are, what you do, and how much does it cost. So we're going to talk about that today with somebody who does this for a living, takes a very creative approach to this by helping both his clients and partners and getting to know each other and building that network versus networking. But before I get into it, I want to make sure you're checking out CoVideo. CoVideo is the way to connect with people. I mean, we're in this level of noise. I put out a video on LinkedIn this week, pretty much describing what's been touted by all the failed SDRs turned sales trainers. You know them. They all have their gimmicks and their 17 touches in 17 days, the hounding, the multi-channel stalking. Well, does it work on you? That's all you need to know. Yes, your manager wants you to do it, but your manager, really just wants you to make your number. And if you make your number, they don't really care what you do. Of course, they say they do. They want the KPIs, and they know you're faking it because they're faking it to their manager, who's faking it to their manager, who's faking it to the board. What we have to do is engage with people, and video is, I think, the thing that's happening today. Like that video that I did on LinkedIn, I was getting over 2,000 views per hour. People liked it because no one wants to get hounded, and I don't think anybody really likes hounding somebody else. And of course, I only got 2 hate messages on it. One was from somebody who was trained by that YouTube phony. Yeah. Trust me, when I'm flying a private jet, I will not be having a sales podcast or selling training. You know why? Because I'm flying a private jet. I have other things to do. So guess what? I don't think it's his jet. And second, you don't need to teach what used to work 30 years ago. And cold calling did work 20 years ago. Cold emailing and spamming worked 3 or 4 years ago. But guess what? I think we all have seen what works and what doesn't work today. And video works today. I got well over 1,000 new followers off of this one video. Because I connected and I helped people. I showed them what does work versus what doesn't. Of course, they can't comprehend what I say does work because that's outside the realm of belief and understanding and comprehension. They're like, can you give me a button? Can you give me a script, a template? Yeah, but you're just going to do it wrong anyway. So video email's one of the key ways to differentiate yourself. So give it a shot, try it out, and you got to get comfortable with video because you want to do screen sharing. It is the way to connect. The people do want to see that you're real, that you're not a robot, and video email is the way to do it. Also, we all need our own CRM. Even if your company has one already or your company's looking for one, Pipedrive's the one I use. I've been using it for years, and it's really maturing, meaning that it has the enterprise capabilities, the integration with all the ecosystem things that you need, e-signing, power dialers, everything you need. It connects up with it, and it's easy to use, it's inexpensive, and you get to try it for 60 days with the Brutal Truth coupon code. So give that a shot. And look at last week's episode. If you're forced to use that CRM that no one likes, you go to nudge.ai. They've got AI capabilities that will auto-populate and correct the information that's in your CRM so you don't have to spend your nights and weekends doing it. I put out a video on that, and pretty much everyone says, yeah, it's the biggest waste of time I have. I can't be spending 10, 15, 20% of my week doing data entry. If you can, guess what? You're not in the right role. There's plenty of data entry jobs out there. They only pay about $25K though. So it's up to you. You decide. I'm not pushing you. I'm just making you aware of these things. Let's get into the interview. I'll sum it up at the end. I'll give you an update for those who are in the courses, what we're covering and the accomplishments that we're making. Here we go. Hey, Jamie, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here. Well, I am the founder and president of Skybridge Associates, which is a firm that creates executive peer networks. These are basically groups for sort of private clubs, basically, for about 20 or so executives that get together several times a year. I've been doing this work for about 15 years or so and deal with really all industries, all roles. And I do this work globally. I've run groups in Europe and Canada and the U.S. In terms of my background, I'm Canadian, so if you're trying to figure out the funny accent, I did grow up in Canada, but I've been living in the Boston area for the better part of 25 years or so.
Yeah. Which province?
I grew up in Ottawa, so it's in Ontario, but right on the border between Ontario and Quebec.
Nice. Yeah. I used to cover Nortel, so I was up there all the time.
Oh, yeah. No, it's right in their backyard.
And how'd you get into this work?
I kind of fell into it. I was actually consulting. I'd been in kind of a smaller company previously. I have sort of a weird background. I have an engineering degree from the University of Toronto and never really worked as an engineer. I actually went into investment banking for a couple of years. Then I went to business school and actually stayed on. I was actually director of MBA admissions at Harvard Business School when I finally left that world. And then I did a number of other things and sort of found myself in kind of an independent consulting role and stumbled upon this little company that was doing this in the very early days and became a partner of that firm. And about 6 years ago, I spun off and created my own firm, Skybridge Associates. But yeah, like I said, like so many things in life, you fall into something and it works out.
And what do you like about it?
God, I love it. Honestly, I think I have the best job in the world. I love being able to first of all, I love working with interesting people. When I call someone, we do a lot of prep before our meetings. We'll have a meeting with 15 or 20 senior people, but I'm a big believer that the quality of any meeting is decided long before you get in the room. And so we'll typically have about a 45-minute call with everybody before every meeting, and I am always struck at how much people open up to me, right? So it's just intellectually it's fascinating. You talk with these smart people, they open up, they tell you what they're dealing with, and then I'm sort of in the pattern recognition game. I'm trying to figure out how the themes that one person have relate to what someone else has. And so it's sort of there's this always sort of this creative process around designing an agenda that's going to satisfy the interests of the group. And then in the moment you're leading a conversation, and honestly the most rewarding aspect is just seeing the group gel and relationships build that wouldn't have built without you. It's remarkably fun and exciting, and you really feel like you're helping people, which is kind of a powerful motivator for me. So I love it. I can't imagine doing anything else.
And are these meetings in person?
They are, yeah. No, I've done some of these things on the phone, and they just don't work if they're not in person. I think you really have to be together, and so people have to be committed. These are meetings that this is a group that you belong to. This isn't something that you attend. You make a commitment to join the group, and we have people coming in from all over the country for these meetings. We typically work with very busy senior people, and they get invited to things all the time. They're only going to come if this is the best meeting they're invited to all quarter, right? So you have to have a level of sort of thoughtfulness and kind of creativity that makes it worth getting on an airplane and traveling from San Francisco to New York for a 3-hour meeting. And so but yeah, being in person is critical. We don't even let people dial in. If someone can't make the meeting, we debrief them afterwards. But
yeah, that'd be a little disruptive now, wouldn't
it? It is, yes, absolutely.
They start doing something else, start typing during the meeting.
Right. No, exactly.
And what do they get out of it?
So I think, look, when you say they, there's actually two elements of they. So in the meeting, there are the members of the group, right? These are typically people who are not paying, actually. These are the executives who will come. What they get is obviously deeper relationships with their peers. They get insights into what others are doing. Competitive insights sometimes, certainly insights into policies, practices, sort of, what are other people doing, why, we focus not just on the what, but the so what, how do these things matter to us, and what assumptions are other people making? I think they also really challenge their own beliefs. I have this sort of framework that says, our beliefs drive our behaviors, and our behaviors drive outcomes. And so if you want a different outcome in any part of your life, it's not enough to just act differently. You have to actually think differently. And so a big part of what people get out of this is an opportunity to kind of acknowledge and challenge their own beliefs. What do I believe? Why do I believe it? If someone else believes something differently, well, that sort of creates an interesting question, right? So I think people get all of that. Now, when I said there's another they, we typically will have these groups sponsored by third parties. And I think that, for the sponsors of the network, who, by the way, sit in the room, they get to hear their biggest clients and prospective clients talking with each other. As any service provider, or even as a salesperson, I know most of your listeners are involved in sales. You only see the 10% of the iceberg that's above the waterline. If you're trying to sell a particular product or service, you talk with your client about that product or service and how it might improve their life. But what you don't see necessarily is the 90% of their day that just isn't is sort of out of scope for what you're trying to do. And so much of what we talk about will actually be that 90%. And so for the sponsor of a network, what they're really getting is they're putting on scuba gear, and they're going below the waterline to examine with their clients and prospective clients issues that they would not be aware of otherwise. This allows them to serve their clients more effectively. It allows them to create solutions for problems they didn't know existed, quite honestly. It also sends, I think, a very distinctive message in the market, right? Which is that we care about your success, and that we're creating something for you, something of value, with no expectation that you'll buy anything in return, right? You create the group, you invite your clients to be part of it. There's no quid pro quo assumed. Now, over time, of course, you'll see that, right? It's just natural. But that's not, there's no overt quid pro quo. So I think there's a lot of value to, like I said, the members and the sponsors get different value, but the beauty of the model is that it actually allows both to get something out of it.
I love the idea, and I hear a lot of reps having success with these smaller get-togethers, and I think they're kind of overlooked and viewed as old school. Well, obviously, you like it, right?
I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love them, and here's what I love the most. So I think you're right. I think people will often do these as one-offs,
Yeah.
right? So you'll get like 4 or 5 people, let's say, and have dinner together, right? And that's fine. And you shoot the bull for 2 hours while you have a meal, and there's value in that. I don't want to pretend there's not. I think really in my experience, where the value really comes is in the continuity and the trust it builds. People will open up much more on the third or fourth or fifth meeting than they will in the first meeting, right? Because there's you don't want to reveal too much. People don't really want to be vulnerable, and yet it's that vulnerability that really is the crux of the problem, and from the salesperson's perspective, the crux of the solution, right? So I think that if one is to do those on an ongoing basis, on a regular kind of cadence, it works great. I think otherwise there's sort of a missed opportunity, and that we really believe in. These are groups that are created and they last indefinitely. I've had groups run 7, 8, 10 years, so that's not uncommon.
And how do you pick the topic?
Well, the topic, like I said, emerges from these conversations with the people beforehand, right? So I don't pretend, I very rarely will kind of assert my authority to kind of, to impose a topic. I do that at my peril. Really what I'm doing is I'm listening, I'm having open-ended conversations with people who see me as objective. What I can bring versus one of the sponsors is a degree of objectivity to those conversations, right? They will tell me things because I'm not trying to sell them anything, right? And so they're willing to be much more open with me about what they're dealing with, what challenges they have. The conversations are all confidential, and so it allows me to create an interesting agenda. And frankly, it allows people to tell me things that they might be afraid to share in open session, right? So as an example, I had someone once that was curious if others were seeing an increase in bankruptcies in their sector, right? This was a private equity firm. They were investing in businesses. I don't think they would have wanted to say in the middle of the meeting, hey, are any of you seeing bankruptcy? Because then everyone turns to them and thinks, well, hold on, are your companies having problems? Whereas if they ask me, I could tee the question up, and it's a much safer way for a topic to get on the table. So there are absolutely times that people will plant an idea with me, and they don't want to take ownership of it, which is fine. But it allows us to have a conversation that maybe others were wondering about as well.
And so the outcome that they get is they get varying perspectives from a peer community. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yes, exactly. Yeah, they get varying perspectives from a peer community. They get ideas of what others are doing. I think we all have blind spots. We know what we know. We don't know what we don't know, and so I think it for anyone who has a desire to grow and develop, it creates just an opportunity to kind of see another side and to even just challenge your own opinions. Oftentimes, people will walk away saying, I kind of thought this is what I thought going in, but at least that validates, that their belief set is not wildly inconsistent with others.
And probably the higher up you go in an organization, the more open they are to this, or?
Yeah, I think so. I honestly, I tend to work with pretty senior people anyway. Most of the people I deal with are C-level executives, and above, and corporate directors I work with a lot from a lot of public companies as well. So, they're very open to it because, frankly, most people don't have mechanisms to do this. People go to conferences, but quite honestly, there's very little conversation at conferences. You're usually sitting there passively,
one
to many, and you're listening to a panel, and panels inevitably are terrible, and so no, they are.
Yeah, it's a talk show or stage.
It's a talk show. It's terrible, right? So and honestly, the people that should be talking with each other are the people that are on stage, but they're just they're speechifying, and so it basically the model allows people of any stripe, but I think particularly senior people who never really go to conferences just to attend them, right? They go there just to speak at them. It's an opportunity to really talk with people that are seeing the world the way they do. I have this vision of leaders standing on top of a series of mountains. You kind of imagine a mountain range, and there's somebody at the top of every mountain, and they all see the landscape differently from the folks below them, but they also see the landscape differently from each other, right? Because some people are, right by a river, other people are by a forest, and so getting everybody together allows them to really see the bigger picture. That's why we call our firm Skybridge. Quite honestly, we're creating bridges in the sky, kind of these virtual bridges between people at the tops of various mountains.
And we had talked a little bit about the distinction between networking and having a network. And you seem really passionate about that.
Well, I am, because sometimes people will say, "Oh, you do networking," and I'm like, "No, I hate networking. Everybody hates networking." And so we don't do networking in that sense. I think networking as a verb implies a very transactional activity, right? And for a lot of people, it feels, frankly, kind of desperate. And that's not at all what we're doing. What we're doing is we're really focusing on building a network. I think everybody needs a network. The noun rather. The verb networking is often distasteful. And so for us, it really is a matter of saying, who are the 20 people, let's say, that you would like to spend more time with on a regular basis. The peers that you would get value spending time with. That should be your network, and you should go out and kind of intentionally create it, or ask one of your service providers to create it for you. And the same thing holds as in a kind of a sales and marketing context, right? Like, who are the 20 clients and prospective clients that you would like to spend more time with on a regular basis? You can only invite your client out to dinner so often before it just feels like
it seems weird. Yeah.
Well, it's weird. You're constantly trying to sell them, right? But this is
Right.
this is honestly, it's like a Trojan horse, right? Because what you're doing is you're saying, hey, you're not coming for me, you're coming for each other, right? So I'm going to invite you to this thing with a bunch of your peers. I'm going to sit in the room, but how as a business development professional could you spend 6 hours at a time, 3 times a year, with 20 of your biggest clients, in an environment that doesn't feel threatening, right? It feels completely authentic and value adding. There are very few ways you can do that, and this is one of those ways.
And when I've seen the best salespeople, this model, this approach is what they do. That they don't pitch, they don't present, they discuss.
Exactly, right. And this is a chance to be invited into a discussion that you wouldn't otherwise probably be invited into. The other thing that's interesting, I have found a lot of people will say, what, we tend to deal at X level, right? So let's say you're dealing at the at the VP level or the director level, but you want to be selling to the SVPs, right? That really you try to sell your offering at a much more strategic level, because you find that at the more tactical level, it tends to be maybe they're under exploiting what you're trying to pitch. It's very tough to get a meeting often with the SVP. And so the idea is, actually, you don't get a meeting with the SVP. What you do is you invite the SVP to meet with a group of his or her peers. And that's how you get the SVP to spend time with you. That basically is the argument. And it works great.
Yeah.
It works fantastically.
That's it, because I was talking just the other day with somebody who does something similar with customers or people who've already bought, and builds these customer advocacy boards.
Right.
And what it ends up doing is actually selling more, because all the customers are talking to each other. They're finding out what really matters. They're coming up with new capabilities, and now have a relationship at the highest level within their customer.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you talk about existing clients, because I think one of the mistakes a lot of people make is they look at these networks as a client acquisition tool, right? I had someone say to me once, this is great, and I'm glad we have getting these 20 people together, but some of my colleagues think it would be better if we had a different group of 20 every time, rather than the same group of 20, right? I said, well, first of all,
much more effective.
Well, look, I said, first of all, you're totally missing your colleagues are completely missing the point of the group. It really is about building that trust over time, and so in terms of the value, we've sort of run the models, and there's significantly more value to be created by doing these for your existing clients than there are to do these to acquire new clients. Like, yes, there is some new client acquisition, but it's an unbelievable client retention tool. It provides a very natural touch point. If clients are having any kind of issues, there's just this natural touch point several times a year where you can kind of have open conversations with them. They don't need to make a special phone call to say, hey, I have a problem. It also is one of the biggest sources of value in some industries is margin, right? And if people see you as purely transactional and don't really trust you, they're going to squeeze you every chance they get, right? They're going to, and as somebody said to me once, the real value of this from a sponsor's perspective is that, there's a degree of trust, and then people are much less likely to squeeze on margin. They're much less likely to defect as soon as things go wrong. There's sort of a degree of, giving you the benefit of the doubt. And so it absolutely is a valuable tool for existing clients, almost more so than new clients.
And that's it. And I think everybody wants to have this network, but people don't know how to do it. And I think, and they view it as transactional, which is not a network. That's the opposite of a network.
Right. That's the networking. Right. That's the transactional piece is the networking, right? Which basically says, I'm going to get your business card and I'm going to,
sell
try
you
to sell
insurance.
something.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. We're going to get married on our first date, right? Versus the longer view, which is saying, we have issues in common. We ought to spend time on a regular basis getting together and talk about those in an open way, and we'll, that'll evolve over time. We'll get some other people together too, right? That's the network.
And once you get into the higher levels, they don't think transactionally. They want somebody that they trust. They want a partner. They want somebody who has their best interest in mind.
Right. Not only do they want it, they crave it. And that's been the most striking thing for me as I've been leading these for the last 15 years is you call someone up, very senior person, and you propose, invite them to join one of these groups. People almost never say no. These are people who are extraordinarily busy, because I think they just recognize that it's such a rare opportunity to get together with a group of peers that most folks jump at it.
Yeah, because within their own network, they probably don't have somebody who's just like them. They have people that are in their own company where they probably don't want to be as vulnerable. They want to see what other people are doing, how they've approached issues. And, I think anytime you meet somebody who's in the same situation, if you have that commonality, which is the real seed of rapport.
No, it absolutely is. And the other thing is that, depending on the size of the company, you may have, if you're in a relatively large company, you probably have very few peers locally, right? There may be only one or two companies in your geographic area that are dealing with the same kinds of issues, sort of at the same scale. And so you may need to go beyond your geography. It's not enough to just get together with, people in town. You have to make an effort, sometimes at a regional or even a national or international level, to create this peer group.
And do you build the network or the group and then find the sponsor, or do you find the sponsor and then get the group?
There's yes. I think it depends. I think there's usually an aspect of each. I think, sometimes we'll have a group of executives that'll say, hey, we really ought to get a group together, or we'll do some investigation and find that yes, in fact, there's a need to get a group together, and then we'll go out and try to identify sponsors. Oftentimes with the help of the members of the group. They'll say these are our largest vendors. These are the people we would welcome to be in the room. Anyone can write a check, so you want someone who's going to provide some sort of value over and above just financial support. So sometimes it is driven by the members. Other times it's driven by the sponsors. You'll have a sponsor that'll say, we really would like to develop better relationships with a certain constituency, and then we'll go out and create the group on that basis. So I think the answer is it depends, and oftentimes those two happen in tandem. We're finding the sponsors, we're finding the market need kind of simultaneously. And
how do you keep the sponsors well behaved?
Well, great question. And by well behaved, you mean not pitching?
Yeah, not doing what in the punch,
Yeah.
ruining, because you get the mojo going, and then somebody starts talking about the product.
Yeah, and honestly, part of that is the value that an independent facilitator brings, right? Like I think that is, people can do these themselves, and lots of folks will try to do it themselves. I think that the value of and this is going to sound like my pitch, but the value of hiring a firm like ours is that we are we're going to tamp that down pretty quickly, right?
Yes.
And so we're going to and we coach our clients on, or our sponsors on, kind of what to do and what not to do. We urge them to, for the most part, speak when they're spoken to, but try not to intervene more than they have to. It actually works to their disadvantage most of the time.
It does, absolutely.
But and the other thing too is honestly, these are often some of their biggest clients, so they will typically bring their senior most executives, and the senior executives are usually pretty well behaved. You'll find the rare case where they might be overly aggressive, but they know how to handle themselves. Yeah. They get it. Yeah. If we're dealing with folks a little further down, I agree that the temptation to pitch might be a little too strong.
And how often do the groups meet?
The answer is, I think, like anything in life, it depends. For most of the groups that I run, I find 3 times a year is a nice cadence, because again, most of the ones I'm running are for fairly large organizations. People are traveling, and to do it more frequently is hard. You'd say in theory quarterly would be best, but with holidays and summer and so forth, you rarely get 4 meetings in. So 3 is a good number. If you do it twice a year and somebody misses a meeting, then they go a full year between meetings, which is just too long. Yeah. You kind of lose you lose the energy. So I find 3 is kind of a nice, a nice happy medium, nice cadence.
And that's it. I can see having a third party do it. It eliminates or reduces the spamminess of it, kind of the overtly hidden agenda.
Absolutely.
When a vendor does it, they're like, oh, yeah, I know.
Well, and the other thing too is, honestly, a lot of vendors, they think of the agenda in the context of what they're selling, right?
How could they not, right?
How could you not, right? And again, this gets back to the 10% above the waterline versus the 90% below. There are many times that we'll construct an agenda that actually has nothing to do with what the sponsors are selling, and that's okay, right? The sponsors need to know those things, and they need to be creating a place for their clients, who, by the way, are still going to spend a ton of money on the 10%, but an opportunity for them to talk with each other about the 90% that's below the waterline.
Excellent. Hey, this has been a great conversation. Where do people go to connect with you and learn more about your work?
Well, they can go to our website. There's all sorts of info there. Skybridge.associates is the website, and they can read about me. They can read about what we do. We also have a podcast which I've just launched, the Building Bridges podcast. They should feel free to listen to that. And I also wrote a book last year, and you can get information about the book, which is also called Building Bridges, which is also available on Amazon and all the usual places. It's available by both physical copies, electronic copies, and audiobook as well. So people can learn more about it through the book as well.
I hope you enjoyed that. Now, I know you probably were thinking through the whole thing, like, that'd be nice, but that's a lot of work, or my company won't do that, or doesn't make sense for us. And I think what you need to take away is first the theme of it. How do you build your network within your marketplace, regardless of whether that's the right approach or not? There's lots of ways of doing it. I've known people who just do breakfast meetings, and the person loves breakfast and is a morning person. And there's a lot of executives that are doing it. I used to do it I would meet with recruiters. Recruiters would know what was going on in the space, and they were networkers by design. They spent their whole day talking to hiring managers. So I'd find out who was hiring the people that I sold to, and those changes would tell me about it. So I'd meet them, and I would give them lists. I would give them contacts. I would give them my information. And then I would partner up with reps. Now, no formal thing. No one writes anything down. Everybody tries to make everything way too formal instead of just this partners in crime approach. I would meet up with the people who sold the products that the companies would buy before they bought my product. Now, this is going back a while, but people would first buy the hardware, then they'd buy the database, then they would buy the middleware, then they'd buy my stuff if there was any money left. So if I knew who was buying the hardware, I would know who to get in touch with. So I had all these friends at these hardware companies. Now, what would I do for them? I would connect them up with new accounts. I would help them get new jobs. I would do anything I could to help them. And of course, everyone is beaten up on them. And today we see it today with Amazon Web Services that's kind of, if they buy Amazon Web Services, then they're going to have to buy a bunch of things after that. What are your clients going to buy right before they buy your stuff? And today you can see that all through, the cheapest ones, LinkedIn, Navigator will show you the platform. You can see who they're hiring. Now, and then I show you in the course how you can do this at scale so that you can follow hundreds and thousands of companies and then have somebody prioritize it based off of whatever makes sense. We got to be more like detectives. Now, this getting together and building a network, it does take time. And maybe Jamie's approach is not a match for you. I get that. Maybe you just point the marketing people towards this. And I did do an episode with somebody who does it on the other end once people become customers. But if you do even like a dinner when you go to a town, if you're an outside person. If you're not an outside person, try and become an outside person. Why? Because you make twice as much. I know you don't want all that tax burden, but that income is very helpful. So brainstorm about it. And in my course, Start the Conversation, Get the Meeting, it's these types of things that I talk about, but I talk about them at scale. How you can automate them, how you can do it on your own where you don't have to get anyone else's funding, how to do it for pennies on the dollar. Now, Jamie's approach is the high-end approach, and I like it. And I wish I had it when I was selling. And I would encourage my marketing team to run over there and tackle him and put him under contract because it works. People love talking about their problems and getting help from peers. They love it. And as long as you don't act like a salesperson, you're not going to alienate them. So it's that type of mindset that I share and Start the Conversation, Get the Meeting. Now you can go to B2B, revenue.com, hit training. You can see the courses. There's two main ones. Start the Conversation, Get the Meeting. That gets you into any account you want. I show you how to prioritize things, stay focused, and it's not just content. Everyone thinks, well, show me the secret. Well, I could show it to you, but then everyone would be a magician if it was just knowledge. There's only like that 1% that can be a magician because you have to practice it. You got to take a little feedback. You have to hone it to your marketplace. That's why we have office hours, and then I've added one-on-ones, 30-minute one-on-one Zoom conversation where we go over a particular account and we work together on how to get into it. And I've got those in there and they work, and I have the evidence to show you. Literally within a week of somebody picking the account, we pick the person, we pick the message, boom, it's got a meeting. Done. Okay? No cold calls, no cold emails, all natural, organic, human-to-human conversations. The other one is closing the complex sale. Now, what this does is show you how to play the whole game. Every sales rep is playing inning by inning, situation by situation, and they may be good at that. But if you don't play the whole game, you're missing the point. Think about a game of chess. Everyone focuses on openings and gambits, but the problem is they don't win the game. They put you in a good position. They are helpful. They're an essential ingredient, but they are not the end product. It's like cooking. They teach you how to chop for about a year. All you do is chop vegetables. Chop, 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 chop. Right? And you learn how to become a great chopper. The problem is that's not the whole meal. Then they put you on, moving the spoon around, making a sauce. Sauces are great. but then you have to put the whole thing together. And they do this to kind of build fundamentals. But what you have to do in sales is not just have the fundamentals, but understand the whole game, your game, not mine, your game, and put it together, the map to money. And that's what it's all about. And I will walk you through each individual deal. You'll see how other people do it. So it's not just me talking, it's office hours. And now we've got 25 to 50 hours of this stuff, real world cases. So it's all about you. And my sole mission is to make you more money. The one-on-ones are included, unlimited. You want to do it once a week? Let's do it once a week, as long as it's applying to making you more money. And you get to build off of it and invest in yourself. And ask yourself this one question. If you're unwilling to invest in you, how can you expect anyone else to? You spent 4 years going through college and you got all this college debt. This teaches you how to really make money. I've been doing this podcast now it's going to be 10 years in August. This was not my plot to take your pennies away. This is my plot to help salespeople become great. And that's my passion. The one-on-ones I have the most fun on because people are open and I'm really contributing. I'm showing people what they're going to run into, how to avoid it, and kind of talking them off the ledge a little bit, because what happens is we get stuck in the fog of war. Once you're in the game, your logical brain gets turned off. You're trying to survive. You're trying to win the deal, and you're not seeing the bigger picture. I help you pull out of that and see exactly what you should do and how you should close that deal. So check it out, b2brevenue.com. You can schedule a 15-minute call with me. All I ask is that you pre-qualify yourself. Listen to 5 or 10 episodes of this and say, hey, this sounds like the type of sale I'm in. I think I could benefit from this. Don't schedule the call. Tell me about the course. No, okay, the podcast tells you about the course. The conversation is, let's talk about the problem you're trying to solve. Where are your deals getting stuck? How many accounts do you need to get into? What would it take to double or triple your income? And let's focus on that. We'll see you next time. Please follow me on LinkedIn. Check out the YouTube channel, Brian Burns Sales on YouTube. I put all my videos up there as well. And we'll see you next time. Oh, I got 2 other podcasts. Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers, and the B2B Revenue Leadership Show. So check them out as well. Thanks for listening.